Hi, welcome to Punchline Talks, the business breakfast briefers. I'm Mark Owen, and each week I invite a panel of business experts to review the morning newspapers, find out what's happened in their own individual business and their own individual business sectors, and finally, what's caught their eye in this week's Punchline. Before I start, I'd just like to thank our fantastic sponsors, Hayswood's Accountants and Business Advisors. And let's meet the crew. So today we've got Linda Cohen. She's a co-founder of Lilybrook PR, director of Read With Me, and currently 1 in 5 children leave primary school unable to read properly, and they never catch up. So we'll find out more about that later. We have David Morton. He's the headmaster of King's School. He's been in position for 6 years. He has 750 pupils, 230 staff, and a turnover 12 million. So we're catching up with the school news from there as well. And finally, never last not least, we've got Cicely Elliott-Berry. She's a co-founder director of Siblings Distillery. It's a brother and sister team, 2 brothers, 2 sisters. And we'll find out how the government's alcoholic duty rate rise is affecting her business as well. Okay, before we start, we'll just review the newspapers. I'll share my screen, courtesy of the BBC. Here we go, The Guardian. PM will go down in history for failing on climate, says Greenpeace. The Mirror. Guess who's had Shell's shares? The Daily Express, fears of a surge in small boats. The Times, strikes push NSH to the brink. The Daily Mail, striking doctors are just harming patients. The Metro, High Street hammered, 400 stores and 12,500 jobs in jeopardy as Wilco goes into administration. The 500 Times, the Financial Times, collapse of retailer Wilco. The Sun, in his hands. This is Kane about to leave Spurs. Is he going? The Eye, mortgage rates war begins as 13 lenders cut prices. This could be good news all around. And the Daily Star, Costa de Dol. They reckon we're all off to Belgium on holiday. Can't see it myself. Okay, let's start with you first, Linda. Thanks ever so much for joining us. First time on the show. So what have you picked out for us, please?
Well, the first thing I thought was today was a really perfect example of how the newspapers sort of are always true to form in terms of the stories that they prioritise. So the Sun clearly thinks it's more important that we worry about whether Harry Kane's going to Bayern Munich than the fact that the earth is on fire. But it's the story about the migrants crisis that really sort of is the one that constantly concerns me, because there's a lot of chatter about it, but nobody's getting to grips with the problem. And I cannot reconcile the fact that we have all these people who have come from one side to the other looking for salvation, and nobody is actually harnessing the fact that they are all here with skills to offer, and that the amount of time they've been here, they could have been working, they could have been in education and really contributing at a time when we need more people to work, and they clearly want to bring something. And the other thing is that nobody ever talks about the cost to our local communities, because obviously they are sent into communities and it's local government that has to pick up the price and deal with it, and children's services that are under enormous pressure. So it's about the fact that the government can't seem to do something that in normal business you would find unsanctionable, which is to actually process people, make something happen, and actually do something productive and constructive at a time when it would benefit everybody.
I think the trouble is they're in a rock and a hard place in some ways, not to protect the government. But the trouble is, if you help them, I can see the logic. If you help them too much, you're kind of encouraging more people to come. But unless you just can't turn off a tide.
I understand that, but nothing's working at the moment, is it? So at least do something constructive, because at the moment the cost is unsustainable and they're not fixing it at any point. So at least the other thing is that if you actually allow people to do something useful while they're here, that it would solve all sorts of other problems. So yes, but otherwise get a grip, get the processing done. It's about actually just putting something in place to make things happen quickly, because it's just not sustainable to have people sitting around doing nothing for months and months on end. And there are children involved in this, and that's the bit that everybody forgets. They paint one picture, but actually, there are children, and this is just wholly unacceptable. And
there's a lot of people coming over, not being funny. They're very intelligent. There's doctors, there's teachers,
they're highly skilled people. The fact they've come from one side or the other, means that they are able to do certain things. And yes, they would have a huge amount to contribute. So why don't we look at it that way, at that end of the telescope, rather than just putting them in hotels on the side of motorways in places that nobody would want to live, and waiting for, and that's when things go wrong.
So what about the barge then? You must be completely and utterly against the barge. I was talking to Alex Chalk about it the other day.
Well, I'm just not sure what it does. It's just about displacement, isn't it? You know, what does it solve? And they're and it's dividing people. So some people think they're being sent to one of the most sort of attractive parts of the country on holiday, and others think that it's they're being caged like animals. So I just don't see what it's achieving. It's just displacement.
Okay, thanks so much for that, Linda. David, what have you picked out in the stories today?
Well, could I just chip in on Linda's story for a moment?
Yeah, of course.
Because I think it's always important to talk from personal experience. My father came over to this country in the 1940s when he was a Polish immigrant after the war, had lost both his parents. He didn't speak a word of English when he arrived, but he obviously learnt very quickly. He went to Liverpool University, he became an architect, paid taxes all his life, and has made a success, not a massive success. He's not a celebrity, but he's done his bit, and that is what most people who are coming to the country want to do. They're seeking to find another opportunity, and we've got massive skills shortages in this country in so many areas. And I'm not going to use the Brexit word for too long, but there are real issues in the area. NHS being just one example, and it's, as you say, it's a shame that the government hasn't acted a bit sooner to get some of these people working in our society to help us. We invited a couple of refugees who were at a hotel in Gloucester to come and meet the students at King's for assembly. And the students were really struck by the fact that this couple were young. One was a software developer, one had been a teacher back home in Venezuela, and they've been sitting for 2 years, in a hotel in Gloucester, unable to do anything. And they could have made a massive contribution to our local community. So I'm on Linda's side on this one.
Okay, I'm going to ask you, Cicely, what's your view?
100% agree. Yeah, I think that's a really good thing to do as well for teenagers and children, is to show that these are real humans. It's so easy to other people just because you see it on the news, and it's all the wording used and the storylines are so demeaning, and using words like flocks of people and basically totally disrespectful and demeaning. And it doesn't show children and teenagers that these are real people with real skills, with real career prospects that, absolutely, like Linda and David both said, that could be contributing something massively. I mean, you don't have to look far to see sectors that are desperate for more people and skilled people. And to me, I can't help but get riled up every time I think of it, because I just think it's beyond frustrating. It's like, how are these two things so badly disconnected? And there's so much more that could be done. But I love the idea to bring people into schools. I think that there's nothing more powerful than just meeting people and seeing them in front of you to realise that they're all real people with real lives, and hopefully make that connection.
Thanks so much for that, sister. I'm going to go back to you, David. Have you picked out some other stories? By the way, my mother came from East Germany as well, so I totally agree with you. Came over here with nothing and built a life and everything else. So,
perfect.
What did you pick up?
With the I newspaper, and I found an interesting article, which I think kind of touches on business, which of course is what we're here to talk about, but it also touches on the environment, which of course is one of the big themes of the moment, and it touches on sort of personal choices and civil liberty as well. So it's about a mother and daughter from the UK who went up on a Virgin Galactic spacecraft, had their kind of 30 seconds to a minute in space, and then landed safely back down, which is fantastic. On the one hand, we've got Richard Branson, one of our most incredible entrepreneurs from this country, has set up multiple businesses, and some have failed, some have thrived. But to be able to achieve space tourism is something which even 10 years ago was looking highly unlikely. But he and obviously several others have managed to achieve that. So on the one hand, I'm obviously delighted for that family, and why shouldn't they enjoy their moment of that incredible achievement? On the other side, as Linda's mentioned already, if you look back at planet Earth, you'll see quite a few plumes of grey drifting across from Portugal or Hawaii or wherever it may be, and the kind of irony that we're facing this climate change catastrophe, which I think more or less anyone sane now is prepared to accept, is largely human caused at the moment. and yet, you know, we're burning enormous amounts of fuel, blasting people off into space for a short period of time. And to link that back to King's, our guest of honour at Foundation Day, our kind of speech day this year, was Helen Sharman, who was the first British woman to go to space. She was absolutely fantastic, and the pupils were hooked on every word she said. But her vision was really interesting, and she said when she went to space and she looked back at planet Earth and saw that incredible blue and green floating in nothing, you know, just millions and millions of miles of nothing. We've got this incredible planet. And she said, you know, since then she has always been very, very environmentally minded. And you know, clearly the message is let's preserve what we've got, rather than heading off to other places or going into space for sort of tourism for a long weekend.
God, I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's absolutely obscene myself, but there you go. And the amount of money spent on it when you could actually help all those poor developing countries. Anyway, thanks ever so much for that, David. Cicely, what have you picked out from the news today?
Typically out of left field. I've one story which is just crazy to me that it's not in any of the headlines today, is the Irish dissident Republicans of releasing the names of half of my family, so my husband, all of his side of the family are Northern Irish. And I saw some friends yesterday evening and none of them had heard anything about it. And I was like, oh God, have you heard about this? You know, because members of my family on that side are in the force and things like that, and kind of couldn't believe that nobody had heard about it. And even my husband came home from work late last night and I said, oh, have you heard about this? And he hadn't heard about it. It's not being talked about anywhere near enough. There are people, I mean, I won't get into Northern Irish politics because it will be here all day, but it
is about interest, though, Cicely. I mean, not being funny, I've watched it on the news, and it's all about engagement. So it is in the national newspapers. It is all over the broadcast media. The trouble is,
none of those headlines, though, that you listed this morning. Not a single. I actually scanned as you were going through them, even the smaller sections, and I couldn't see it appear anywhere. It is somewhere.
No, that's because it was being on yesterday's news.
Okay.
So it wasn't the papers yesterday. That's all that's happened is the papers are a day behind.
So, but speaking to young people yesterday, speaking to 3 different friends in their 20s and my husband in his early 30s, and none of them had heard about it through the last couple of days of the media. So whether it's going into certain areas and not others, it was really, alarming to me. But also just as a story in general, I think it really, for people living in England, it's very easy to have the kind of mentality that Northern Ireland and Ireland is not necessarily our problem. It gets quite often, and if you spend a lot of time, especially in Northern Ireland, you really can see how they feel forgotten about. You really can. It's so obvious, and especially kind of the young people who are floundering without job prospects and things like that, and you kind of see the frustration and how these things are starting to happen. And it's just to me, it was a very, very shocking story that wasn't getting the attention. For me personally, I didn't see it as much as I thought I should have seen it. And like I say, probably because I've got that connection with Ireland, I have a bit more of there's a bit more of a shock factor to me because I know what that can mean for some of the men and women.
It's absolutely frightening. It really is. What's happened there with that data leak. Being an ex-forces person myself and remembering the troubles, and remember looking under my car every single day when I'd go out. I remember being parked on Eastgate Street and I got out of my uniform and I had to look under my car to make sure that nothing was there, or marching through Cheltenham and Gloucester. It was a day just after a bomb went off in God knows where it was. But anyway, if you're a certain age, like we are, unfortunately, we remember that trouble. Yeah. So Northern Ireland, I think, is we understand it a bit more, but perhaps because
not my age group at all. I got married last year in Northern Ireland, and almost all of my friends who came over literally said, words to the effect of like, what was it that happened here? So the thing, there was like a Northern Irish thing, wasn't there? And I'm like, yeah, there was a Northern Irish thing. And it's it's really mad to me that that's not been talked about enough, that young people now know nothing about it. But
luckily, we've got a headmaster in our midst here. So David, not being funny, should the kids be taught that in school? Do you have time? Is it in the curriculum, or is it totally not there? It's a difficult one, I suppose.
Yeah, if you take history and politics and you're reading about modern history, then obviously it'll be covered, but there's quite a bit of British history to get through in lessons already. But I think it would depend from school to school. I was talking to somebody, I'm down in London at the moment, and their child's doing their GCSEs and they're learning about citizenship. So they are learning about modern politics as part of their GCSE course. So it will be out there. And of course, head teachers can talk about these things in assemblies in the morning as well. So it's absolutely something we should be covering. But I think a lot of children born nowadays, unfortunately, of course, won't remember the troubles in the 70s and 80s in particular that those of us of perhaps you or my generation, Mark, do.
Yeah, and it was horrendous. And that data breach, I can understand exactly where you're coming from, Cicely. The story I picked out actually from was from the Sun today. Actually, was Grandad's Wacky Horde. It's this guy. He's the fan of the flames. Funny enough, last week I picked out a story of a chap who collected things. This guy's he actually collected 350 fire extinguishers, and one of them was from Scotland. It cost him £800. And he paid for them to be flown home. Goes to show we've all got our little hobbies and things that we like to do. Anyway, right. Thanks so much for that. Going over the newspapers. Linda, let's go over to you, please, because, wow, you obviously run Read With Me. Can you tell us about the charity and the problem that's there at the moment, please?
Right. So, first of all, we're a social enterprise rather than a charity, and purposely so, because that allows me to run the organisation like a business, which means that we can be much more agile. We have a crisis. Children are leaving primary school unable to read well, and that impacts their ability then to take a full part in education and to, take GCSEs. And most importantly, it means that they disconnect, and it's a gap which you rarely make up. And the problem is getting worse and worse and worse because, COVID obviously made things difficult, but things were bad beforehand. So we send volunteers into school, very simple mechanic, twice a week, 10 to 15 minutes with each child, hearing them read, and importantly, having those conversations which not only mean it improves the understanding of the text that children read, but the opportunity to have a conversation one-to-one with an adult, and actually develop communication and social skills, which are quite often missing. Lots of children now going into school at 5 unable to speak, and it improves that, and above all, confidence, which is what every child needs. So that's what we're about. 5,000 children a week at the moment, 250 volunteers. Probably by the time we go back in September, that number will have gone up again because we've reached a tipping point. So we're getting more volunteers almost on a daily basis. By Christmas, 10,000 children, probably the thick end of 500 volunteers. And we're in 36 schools at the moment. We'll probably be in 50 by Christmas.
Well, fantastic job. So how do I get to become a volunteer if I want to sign up? And how long would it take me? And say I've got my company, there are 9 people that work there. How can we help as a business or any other business watching this?
Right. So if anybody wants to volunteer, if they can find an hour a week, we can normally within school hours. But also we're doing something new now with Gloucester Academy, which is in registration period. So before school, 8:30 till 9:15. If you've got an hour, then we can make use of that, hearing children read. It's obviously a pretty rigorous process in terms of you have to be reference checked and have a full DBS. That goes without saying. And then we give appropriate training depending on the age of the child that you're going to hear. But all you have to do is email Julie at Read With Me, and then we can give you all the information, or go to our website, which is readwithme.org.uk, and then we can start the process.
It's quite funny because my wife used to do this. So she works for a bank, and she used to go. I think there were 12 of them, and they used to go out in the community. She'd give her a lunch break every Thursday, and she would read with a child. I think she did it for like 6 years. So and it's funny. I brought up this meeting, that you were coming on the show today, and we discussed about perhaps doing it together. And
we talk about it doing good, but actually you'll find if you talk to any of our volunteers, for most of them, they're the ones who get the greatest satisfaction from it. And some of our volunteers who are employees say that it's the highlight of their working week. So it's totally brilliant. It's a virtuous circle, really. It works for everybody.
Well, fantastic. And as you know, we're going to support you as much as we can, Linda, moving forward as well. There'll be a double page feature in the next magazine too. Anyway, thanks ever so much for that. David, King's School. Obviously, well on the map here in Gloucester, stone throw away from the cathedral, well, attached to Gloucester Cathedral. My own youngest daughter, went to King's, absolutely loved it. She's a teacher now. So David, tell us about King's. What's going on?
Yeah, we're doing really well at the moment. Thank you, Mark. So I've been there 6 years, and the pupil role has been moving up, and that's always important in an independent school. But as well as being a school, we're also a business. So there are all the challenges of running a business at the moment, as there are for everyone else on this call. And we're also a charity, which I think a lot of people don't understand. So we've been a charity for the school's whole existence, dating back to 1541. So all the any surplus, if there is any, each year is reinvested back into the school. So we're working really hard on kind of all three fronts, really, to run a good business in a challenging climate, to deliver a fantastic education to our kind of hardworking parents and the pupils who come from around the county, and then to make sure we fulfil our charitable objectives as well.
Slightly breaking up there, David.
And we're pleased to hear that we have with sixth formers.
David, is everyone broken up? No. You broken up. He's in the middle of London. Sorry, David, you broke up then. Can you just try that bit again?
No. Okay. Yeah, of course. Sorry, the whole thing.
Yeah, just about the school it was.
Okay. Sorry about that. I am in London, so it should be absolutely fine. Yeah, the school's a business, and it's a charity, and it's a school, and so we have sort of three parts to it. In terms of the school, we've got our A-level results and BTEC results on Thursday next week. So it'll be interesting to see how the students have done. It's always a very tense time for everybody. I'm sure we all remember getting some of our GCSE or A-level results. And in terms of this year, it's the government talks about a flight path back to 2019, when the students last took their real exams before the pandemic. So it'll be interesting for students around the country to see how their results pan out this year, and probably they look to be a little bit lower than they were last year, to bring us back down to that 2019 level. But the Students' King's staff have worked really, really hard over the last few years, so we're optimistic of some good results. As a charity, I was saying that we do work with Read With Me. So we have students who come in from our local primary school on Saturday morning, and they read with our sixth formers in the sixth form centre. So it's really nice to have that peer-to-peer reading. And as Linda was saying, our students get a lot out of it, as well as the local children who come in. We've also got a big holiday activity and food programme running with The Venture in White City this summer at King's. So we provide lunch for the families. And Bloodhound Education, another Gloucestershire local company, are coming in and doing some STEM activities with children from sort of Matson and White City area, and enjoying kind of the King's facilities, and our students are helping out to support that as well. So the charity side is going really well. And then as a business, the numbers of pupils are rising, have been over the last 6 years that I've been there as a head. So the number of employees is increasing, and with that comes all the usual challenges, really. And of course, we're trying to develop over the summer holidays. We are, because the school's increasing in size, we're taking some new buildings on College Green, which we share with the cathedral. So that's really exciting. But of course, the energy costs are going up. The inflation means that all the materials that are going into those are going up. And of course, we're in a challenging political and economic climate. So some of our parents are anxious, understandably, about school fees and where things are going to go that way as well. So these are all the little sliders that we're trying to balance, and school still works right through the summer. So yeah, we're as busy as ever.
Well, just want to touch on that, actually, because you brought about the political side of things, or the money side of things. The Labour government, if they got into power, are looking to scrap the charity status of independent schools. That'll have a massive effect on the numbers.
But they're talking about adding VAT onto school fees.
Sorry.
And if they do that, which I think would be a very, very poor decision for a number of reasons, then obviously that would add quite a hike to independent school fees, and some of the smaller ones and some of the specialist ones would close down. So I think people misunderstand independent schools. Most of them are charities. We're not all like, the Eatons or Charterhouses of this world. King's is a local charity and has been for 480 years in Gloucester. And lots of our children have bursaries and scholarships to help them to be there. And we work really hard for the local community as well. So it would be a shame to lose, for example, all the choristers who sing at Gloucester Cathedral, who come from King's. We do a lot of work with children who wouldn't necessarily fit into the local state school system, and they do well at King's because we've got smaller class sizes. So there's quite a bit going on there, but we'd never pass on a 20% increase in fees. The school would more or less close down overnight. But I don't think it's been fully costed out by Labour at the moment. So I think there's a bit of water still to come down the river before we know what's going to happen.
Without a shadow of doubt. Yeah, it'd be actually tragic if they did that. But anyway, thanks ever so much for that and explaining that bit as well, David. Cicely, always great to see you. Love your gin, by the way. Let's. I've just talked about the government actually, so I am going to bring about the government's alcoholic duty rate has gone up. What's it meant to your business? And what sort of cost are we looking at the moment?
Yeah, so it's a couple of pounds, and it's on our products because they're, or just less than, but because of the strength of them, because they're high strength products. Obviously, what that means is that we have another cost increase, which, you know, with energy, as David touched on, which, you know, whilst we run at Sibling off 100% sustainable, we still have enormous bills every month. It's a very energy hungry process. We've managed to cut our energy consumption down by a third in the last 3 years, but it's still very energy hungry. So that's an enormous cost. Obviously, everything that we use in materials is also things like our glass bottles take a lot of energy to make. So the price of the glass bottles has gone up absolutely wildly over the last sort of 18 months, 2 years. Everything to our corks, our raw ingredients, our botanicals, everything has just gone up. So, you know, we've managed to swallow that over the last few years until eventually this duty increase is kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, and we have had to pass that price increase on to our customers. Generally speaking, across the board with your distributors, it is assumed that you will pass the duty increases on because it is across the board for everyone. But obviously, in a time where people are cutting back on luxury products, a price increase to the end customer is the last thing that we want.
Yeah. But I mean, it's a kind of perfect storm for you, isn't it? You know, like you said, the national insurance went up for your staff. You know, the glass, corks, everything. I mean, how much glass in particular has that gone up?
Glass has pretty much doubled, which, you know, obviously is a really big cost. We are trying to implement sort of bottle deposit and recycling schemes, but it is very difficult, especially for us. We have a bit of a tricky situation because we actually produce alcohol from raw materials. Our license is different. We're a full working distillery, which is very rare in the UK. The vast majority of distilleries buy their alcohol in from a mass producer, but that means that the government has really easy tracking on the alcohol that they're making. If we start asking people to return their bottles to us so we can refill them, it makes our tracking on our alcohol duty very difficult. So it's not as easy. We're a very eco-conscious company, so you would think that we would be able to very easily put that in place. But for us, because of the way that our license works and things, it's not. So there's a number of different things. I think it is good that sometimes these things happen and they force your hand on the environmental side of things, because we want to do that. But as a business, it's very hard to make a choice to do things that are going to dramatically increase your costs when you're such a small business, and, you know, paying your staff is the sort of first thing on your mind. And yeah, so there's that element to it. But I'd like to say, you know, it's not.
Do you get to that case? Sorry, Cicely. Do you get to the case like I've been running my own business where actually I haven't paid myself? You know, there have been months where I haven't actually paid myself, and I know of other business owners, and all we've done is pay our staff, pay the bills, pay everybody.
Through the pandemic, through the backlash of the pandemic, our family, me and my brothers and sisters, will always be the first to lose out. It's the right thing to do when you run a business, certainly, to make sure that the people who work for you in good faith get paid at the end of each month. There's no question about that. But, you know, so you will always be the first person to miss out. You know, ultimately the business is our baby, and we'll do whatever we have to do to keep it going. But yeah, it's not all doom and gloom. We have luckily a really amazing kind of core of a handful of customers that come back to us year after year. We go to enormous lengths to make our products what we believe to be head and shoulders kind of above the mass produced products. So we do have people who will come back to us because they kind of believe in what we do. I know it's not as noble as running a school or a charitable trust and things like that, but, you know, we make gin, and it's that's our business. It's our family's kind of heritage in the drinks industry, and it's, you know, something that we care enormously about, and we care about being able to kind of do something that we believe is really creating a beautiful product. And, you know, then when we go to our farmers markets and we sell to our small sort of independents, we know that we're giving them the very best product that we possibly can. And hopefully when that person buys it and gives it as a gift to their brother or sister, their family, their friends, they can feel really good about that too, that they're giving something that's a literally hand-produced product. We hand label every single bottle, all those sorts of things. So yeah, there's a huge amount of care that goes into it, Mark, and you're absolutely right. We'll always be the first to lose out, but I don't want that to sound like a sob story, because we love what we do. We wouldn't work as hard as we did if we didn't.
It's just a reality of running your own business. That's all I wanted to make a point of, really. And you know, and it's tough. It is tough, and I know that a number of glass companies have gone bust. A big one in Tewkesbury because just cost of the glass. Very quickly, you're also going to be moving shortly into the food dock, aren't you? Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Just very quickly, quick promo on that. What is it? When's it going to take place?
So I did say that I would let you know first, Mark, and I did get an email yesterday to say that our keys are within a fortnight of getting our keys. So yeah, we've been waiting since the beginning of 2019 to be able to really get going on this. So yeah, we're weeks away from getting our keys. Once we get our keys, it's going to be another sort of matter of weeks really for everyone to start turning around their units. Obviously, I don't know if anybody knows about the food dock, but it's a set of 13 independent producers and chefs, and in our case obviously drinks producers, who are opening bars, restaurants and cafes within the Gloucester docks in what's going to be called the food dock. It's a massive renovation project of 3 buildings that have been sat empty for a long time, being turned into what will hopefully be a really exciting, really kind of buzzy food and drink area where you could go. And the idea there is that you could come into our bar, which is going to be called Our House. You could come into our house for a glass of champagne or a cocktail before dinner. You could go into Italy for some really lovely Mexican food by the chef there, Lewis. And then you could go to Holy Gelato, which is another Gloucestershire-based company, and get your pudding and Holy Gelato. And in that way, you'd be supporting 3 independent businesses rather than going to one of the sort of big chains in the area. Really, really exciting for us. We're going to be opening Our House, which is the idea behind the name with that is obviously we're a family, and growing up, everyone used to always say it's so much fun at your house, or I bet you have a good party at your house, because we've always been in the drinks industry. So we wanted to invite everyone to our house, and the kind of slogan above the door will be everyone's welcome in our house, because we really kind of, hopefully as a business and certainly as a family, embody that kind of mentality that we just love people. We love to create a fun and kind of upbeat environment. So that's the plan. It will be a couple of kind of key things. We'll be doing lots of tasting evenings and workshops, masterclasses on kind of champagne tasting, gin tasting, wine tastings and food pairing evenings there. And we want to start running across the weekend, sort of Thursday, Friday, Saturday evenings. We're going to do a champagne happy hour as well. So we're looking forward to hopefully bringing some good vibes.
Well, there you go. And I've learned a lesson is never to ask Cicely for a free promo moment.
I will take every opportunity, Mark.
No, it sounds very good. I can't wait to go to your house. Anyway, right, or our house, as we say. Linda, we're coming to the end of the show. We'll have to wrap up very quickly if you don't mind. So what's the story that's caught your eye in this week's Punchline, please?
I think the story about Renishaw and the development of sort of Olympic bikes, because Renishaw is sort of the jewel in Gloucestershire's crown in terms of private employer, and the thing that I think is perhaps the business community knows Renishaw incredibly well, but most of the Gloucestershire population perhaps don't. And it's to understand how many opportunities they have, not just at the top end in terms of doing really clever stuff, but also there's a huge amount of opportunity in terms of manufacturing in places like Stonehouse. So, and their training is second to none. So they really can give everybody a leg up into working for, you know, a wonderful organisation. So I think, it was just, yes, another example of them being at the forefront of innovation, because they're also working on electric vehicles. So yeah, just a brilliant thing to see.
They're just a great company. Fantastic. Thank you ever so much for that. David, what's caught your eye now with this week's Punchline, please?
I really enjoyed the story about John Eales, the local historian, being made the mock mayor of Gloucester. I didn't know Gloucester particularly before I came and lived here. And I've been really blown away by the kind of civic pride and the strength of the community in the local area. So I like the idea of the mock mayor. I think the fact that we've got the History Festival that Janina Ramirez and Richard Graham are so good at promoting. We've got this incredible history in Gloucester, which sometimes perhaps gets a bit lost in some of the current challenges that the city faces. So the idea of a historian being our kind of mock mayor and representing us as a community. He does so much in terms of volunteering, clearly, in the local area, and I just thought that was a great thing to see.
Yeah, no, it's great story, and a nice chap as well, apparently. Anyway, okay, Cicely, what have you picked out from this week's Punch?
I just picked up on the story. Obviously, it's national news as well, but it was in Punchline this week. The Wilko's closing down. It seems like a real shame. You can obviously understand all the reasons why it kind of makes sense that as a model it's a little bit outdated, but it's. I always remember going there as a kid with my granny, and it seemed to be the shop that had absolutely everything in the world. So it's it'd be a real shame to lose it. It's a handy place to be able to pop into too, but. I guess it shows the kind of the way that things have moved on, and that there's a new model that kind of fits and works for people better. So a bit of an evolution, but I wonder what will come in its place in Cheltenham. The brewery quarter's really buzzing, so hopefully something good.
Something good indeed, yes. Very sad. A bit like the Woolworths, really. It was a kind of spin-off from that, wasn't it? My story of the week is actually Gloucester Services being on Channel 4. I was there at the event on Monday, Cotswold Farm Shopping. If you didn't get a chance to watch it on TV, it was really good. But it's really about that community partnership, 500 jobs being created, local producers, flying the flag there. I just thought it was just fantastic for Gloucester, and it's been 9 years now. It took 20 years to get off the ground, but it's operated for 9 years already. And unfortunately, sorry.
As a producer who sells to them, they are fantastic to work with. Just like they are one of those customers who are the kind of gold dust of customers, and we love working with them. So I'll always fly the flag for Gloucester Services being great.
Can I say something else as well? One last thing. Remember that 3p in every pound spent at Gloucester Services goes back into community projects that echo everything that Cicely says. They look after their suppliers, they look after the community. There is nobody to touch them. They are an outstanding organisation.
Yeah, no, goes without saying. Well, unfortunately, that's all we've got time for. I'd just like to thank our fantastic panel. Thanks ever so much to you guys. Our wonderful sponsors, Hazelwood's Business Accountants and Advisors, and for all of you for watching today. If you like the show, please like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget, it's all in the Punchline. Thanks for watching. Bye.